Welcome to Relationships on Fire. I am Cori Myka, your host and your coach, expert in being in a relationship and coaching people in a relationship with first responders, cultivating those marriages that we love and serve us. Today's episode is just our starter episode to kind of dig in and find out why we're doing this, what are relationships about, and how this podcast is going to help you cultivate the relationship that you love. So let's just dive right in to talk about why this podcast, why Relationships on Fire. When you think about how people talk about relationships, we are often given the idea that a long-term marriage or romantic relationship is hard, right? You celebrate those people who have their 50th anniversary and people say, oh, you make it look so easy. And they're like, well, it wasn't so easy. I mean, I'm happy that I'm here, but you have to get through the good and the bad times. At a wedding ceremony, it's like, yes, oh, it's so beautiful and wonderful and romantic. And, relationships are hard. And they just kind of get left there. That statement just kind of sits there. Marriage is hard. Relationships are hard. And then you add on top of that, being married to a first responder. That's hard. The schedule, the stress that our spouses come home with or maybe don't bring home, and we don't really know and we feel lost and confused by it. For those people who have kids, the single parenting, the on and off single parenting, being married to a first responder is hard. Okay, so we're given this statement and just told it's hard, but what's next? I don't want to just be told that it's hard and be left with that. So that makes me feel, okay, if it feels hard to me, I don't feel so alone. So that's not a bad thing to know that it can be hard for other people too. But just leaving you with the idea that it's just hard and go figure it out on your own, sink or swim on your own, that isn't great. And that's what this podcast is about, is to give you what comes after the sentence of it's hard. Okay, so now what? If it's hard, what do I do with it? Do I just live in hard? Do I just kind of languish in my relationship and watch it go from the romantic high point of maybe a wedding ceremony or a commitment or those first date times, and then just watch it kind of float and drift along and lose connection with my partner, maybe bounce back together sometimes and lose connection? What do I do in my relationship, in my marriage, so I feel connected, I feel love, I feel like I'm giving to my relationship and receiving from my relationship? So it's not just hard. And there you go. You're alone in the hard. This podcast is to be supportive of you and to understand where you're coming from and to give you the tools to change the things that you want to change, to not just be stuck in hard or stuck in worry or stuck in overwhelm of that single parenting or worrying about the stress of the job or feeling disconnected over time. It's really common. We get wrapped up in the day-to-day minutia of life, and we can find ourselves going, gosh, how did I get here? This isn't the deep loving connection that I started with or that I really wanted to vision for the future of my relationship. So within this podcast, I'm going to be giving you tools and concepts to really nurture and think about your relationship in a new and fresh way, so that you're not just repeating the same thing. It's just not the rinse and repeat cycle. We want to get off that cycle and take a side trip and look at it in a new way. Build up some new tools, new capacities within yourself that you can bring to your relationship so you can feel that love and connection again. I'm going to bring to you case studies of things that really come up with my coaching clients, right? So you can feel that sense of, oh, right, I'm not the only one who's going through this. This is what lots of people have. And this is how we're finding ways to move through it in this gentle and curious way for growth instead of stagnation. I'm also going to bring you some brain nerdiness, how the human brain works, because this is really, you're showing up with your human brain and your spouse's human brain, and you're mixing it together in your household. And sometimes it collides. Sometimes it works out beautifully. Sometimes it's just this silent roommate situation. So understanding how you got to the place you got to, understanding how to have compassion with yourself, because so much of how we get to where we are has to do with the way our brains are just wired. And we don't have to just exist in the way that they're just wired. We do have a capacity to work with the hardwiring of our brain. It's really useful to understand how those systems work so we can move through it in an intentional way instead of just it's happening way. I'm also going to talk about how to fuel your relationship, or what fuel is in your relationship. If it's sluggy, destructive fuel, I mean, I'll use our fire analogy here, right? If it is a fire of fuel that is burning you, or that is just a fuel that is making you smolder, just having like a smoldering, smoking fire. Or what is the fuel that you need to have a warm fire, right? That is useful to you. You can warm yourself to, you can cuddle in front of, you can cook food over, right? There is fuel that hurts us, burns us, right? Or isn't really giving us what we need. It's just smoldering along. Or there is a fuel that is warm and connective and we want to be around and supports us. So we're going to talk about how to create the fuel you want and to be able to identify and let go of the fuel you don't want. And then on occasion, we'll bring in special guests on special particular topics that they have really key specialties that is useful in our relationships. So look out for announcements for those special guests. All right, let's talk a little bit about, there's a couple things I want to bring to you today, a little bit in the nerdy side, right? Just to give us some parameters. It's nice to start with a little box of like, what is going on here? So what is coaching? I am a professional coach. I'm a professional relationship coach. So what does that mean? Coaching, you can kind of think there's like coaches, there's friends, and there's therapists. There's a little bit of overlap in each of these areas. A friend is somebody who you can complain to, you can celebrate with, and they're going to like what we call jump in the pool with you. Oh my gosh, it is terrible when our spouses work 72-hour shifts. That's when everything goes wrong. The pipes burst in the house, the kids get sick, my job is going haywire, right? Everything that's going to go wrong will go wrong when they're working that regular shift plus that overtime, mandatory overtime shift. And when I'm your friend, I'm just going to like jump in and feel that pain and complain right along with you. I'm just going to be all in there with you. Now, on a coaching relationship, I'm going to listen to all of that. I am going to not try and convince you in or out of it, but I'm not going to jump in the pool with you because it's not useful. The job of a coach is to pull away, is to step away and kind of get 10,000 foot view of all of that, let's just call it drama. All of those thoughts, all of that, whatever is happening, or not happening in your relationship. I don't want to just jump in there with you and be like, oh my gosh, it is terrible, right? That's like going back to the beginning where people just say marriage is hard. End of sentence. The crickets, right? I'm going to step back. And that's what this podcast is about, is to step back. And your invitation, when I work with a coaching client, together, both of us are stepping back and looking at your life, looking at your thoughts, looking at what's going on from this further away view, from this removed view. And sometimes you even look at yourself like in the third person, just like, oh, I can have compassion with what's going on for them, for myself, right? For that person over there. And I can begin to understand and start to apply coaching tools to understand what's going on from a very neutral, again, far off perspective, removed perspective. Because when you're in the middle of it, you're just in the middle of it. You're just in the muck of it. It's hard to see a way out of it. It's hard to see how you got in it. It's hard to see a way out of it. When I coach with people, I'm not in there validating how they're feeling and getting in there with them. I'm saying, let's just be curious about it. Let's use the tools that we have to understand it, to unwind it, and to create something else. How do I get out of the muck? A therapist, again, a therapist kind of has some of these friend things, kind of has some of these coaching things. But additionally, what a therapist has is they have medical backing, right? They work under a medical model. So when you are no longer, when a person's not functioning in their day-to-day life, when they need that extra structured support, somebody who's clinically depressed or going through diagnosed PTSD, right? There are times that we need that extra support that we might need to work in combination with using drug therapies or very specific kind of therapeutic approaches that are supervised by a group of people, right? So when we're needing more support in there, this is what a therapist is. Now, a therapist also does do a lot of coaching. There are people who see a therapist and it's more like a coaching relationship, but they also have that added piece of they have a medical model in which they work under as well. So there can be some overlap there, but really making a distinction, right? There is a time that therapy is the right thing when you're not functioning in your day-to-day activities of life, when you have some diagnosis. That's the time for the therapy. All the tools that are taught in coaching can get applied into the therapeutic place, right? So there's some overlap in that piece. I am not a therapist. I don't do the medical model side, but work with them to give that extra support and help people resource and access that when that is what they need, because that's a super important piece of the puzzle. We need friends, we need coaches, we need therapists. Different times for different places. It's all the support, whatever support we need to create the amazing life, the amazing love and connection that we want to see. All right. So let's talk about the very first tool, coaching tool here. So it's really helpful to just get some definitions. And the first definition I want to look at with you is, what is a relationship, right? We're here to talk about relationships, your spousal relationship, your significant other relationship, right? Relationship with your first responder. So what is a relationship? So let's just go to definitions. What does our dictionary tell us? So relationship is a way in which two or more concepts, objects, or people are connected, a state of being connected. Okay, so a relationship has to do with connection. That's why oftentimes we talk about my relationship doesn't feel great. I don't feel connected to the other person. I don't feel connected to something. I feel disconnected. Another way, definition of a relationship is the way in which two or more people or groups regard and behave towards each other. And let's just pull apart that word regard. Regard is how you consider or think about someone or something. Okay. So a way in which two or more people think about and behave towards each other. So it's about connection and about thoughts. So relationship, if we want to really boil this down, a relationship is really about our thoughts. It's really about how we are thinking about something. Two things are in proximity to each other. It may be that you're in proximity next to each other on the couch, or, several miles away in two different buildings. We are still related to that other thing, in this case, another human being, through our thoughts, how we relate to the other person. A relationship is not acts of service or sex or beautiful social posts or the things that we do. It really is about how we think about something. This is why, taking this out of the spousal relationship, you can have relationships with things that are not even sort of in your space, right? I have a relationship with lots of authors, right? I've never met them, but I think about them. I relate to them through their writing, right? They write beautiful things or controversial things or boring things, right? And I have thoughts about them. I have relationships with people driving down the road, right? Sometimes it's a good relationship. Sometimes it's not a great relationship, right? Depending on how I'm thinking about them and thinking about myself and how we are relating to the road together, sharing that space together. The really good news, the reason why I want you to think about this and to kind of observe this, that relationships are really about how we think and what we're thinking. This is great because you are the one in charge of your thinking. So if your relationship is not the way you like it, we want to check out how we are thinking about our relationship. How are we relating to this other human being? We can't change the actions that anybody else does or how somebody shows up, but we can be curious about and have understanding of how we think about it. And is this serving us in the way that we want it to? Is it serving us to think about our relationship in this way? Let me give you a little example here from a relationship, right? Let's just say your spouse comes home and brings flowers, right? So this is just a thing. It's totally neutral. It is not good or bad. It's just a thing. Spouse came in, brought flowers. Now you are going to relate to that action because you're going to have a thought about it. And your thought is going to be, oh, they love me so much. And you're filled up with love. Or they come in with flowers and you might have the thought, oh my gosh, somebody died. When I see flowers, I think of funerals and dead people who died, right? Totally legitimate. Somebody could think that way. Another one, they come in, they bring flowers and you think, they must want something from me. What did they do wrong? What are they trying to cover up? What are they feeling bad for? Right? All of these different ways can be totally true, totally the way you think about the same action. What we want to do, remember that 10,000 foot view, is to pull back and not just have the automatic thought of, oh, they love me, or someone died, or they must be hiding something, right? You're going to have your thought, and you have your reasons for having your thought, right? You're going to have it. It's just going to pop up in your head really quickly, right? Probably when I said your spouse walked in with flowers, you actually had a thought right away, like what that would mean to you and for your specific relationship. It's just there really quickly. And if it's that thought, we want to see what our thoughts are giving us in our relationship. Is it giving us what we really want? Is it giving us that love and connection? Now, we're not going to just like replace the thought with a thought you don't believe. If you're thinking, what are they trying to hide? And you say to yourself, well, I should be thinking they love me. And you just try and interject this thought. But if you don't really believe it, that's not going to work. It's understanding. It's coming, again, 10,000 foot view, having compassion with yourself to see and get curious. That's interesting. This is how I'm thinking about flowers coming in the door from my spouse. Let me get curious about this. Let me have compassion with myself. Let me see all the ways that this is or is not helping my relationship and giving me the kind of relationship that I want. In our relationships, we're in relationships with adult human beings. They are autonomous. They are themselves, right? We want them to be who they are, right? We didn't marry them or get into a relationship with them because they did everything and saw everything the way we do, right? They're a different human being. We don't get to control them. We can make requests, but they're going to do what they do, and that's okay. It's not our job to try and control that. How we feel comes from how we think about what they are doing or what they are not doing. I feel very differently about those flowers depending on how I think about those flowers. My feeling that I derive when those flowers come in the door comes from me and how I think about it. Doesn't have to do with their actions or their inactions. So this is the best news ever because you can be the one to examine and change and use the tools to work with those thoughts. The bad news is that the way we think about things is very habitual, right? And it takes a bit to unwind it. And that's why I want you to keep coming back to this show. That's why I have a whole membership of content and information to help you unwind it. You got programmed with how you think about things over time. And you need to give yourself some time to unwind it and some practice to make those changes. That's what this podcast is for. That's what the coaching is for. That's what my courses are for. In the place of making changes, building that love and connection, you want to be really kind to yourself. Use a lot of curiosity, not judgment, right? This is not a space for judgment. Judgment is a really good way to hold yourself in one place, to keep spinning around and around and around. Curiosity, back to that fuel, the idea of fuel, curiosity is a fuel that helps open things up. One of the things that we want the most in our relationships is to have love, to be connected and feel love. Using curiosity for yourself, for your spouse, for your relationship, that's about building love. Judgment, criticism, right? Hating on yourself, your spouse, your relationship, that's not building love. If what we want is love and connection, that's the process that we need to use to bring the change that we want to see in our relationships. This is a wrap for our first episode. Thank you so much for being here. I want to leave you with just one more thought to take you forward into your relationship today to hold you till the next time I see you on the next episode. Be committed. A relationship takes commitment. You have committed so much so far. Be committed to the change you want to see. Be committed to the love and connection, the curiosity, to building your tools. Be present. Actually show up, right? You have to be committed and be present. Show up with curiosity and love for yourself and your spouse. Thanks so much for listening. Make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast app so you can get every episode. And when you are ready to be in action, come find us. Facebook, Instagram, or our website. It's all the same name, relationshipsonfire.com. We've got that S on there. There's lots of us having relationships. So relationships with an S, onfire.com. Thanks so much. Saying goodbye, your fire and water gal, Cori Myka. See you next time.